Society builders paved the way to a better world, to a better day. A united approach to building a new society. Join a conversation for social transformation. Society builders. Woo.
Society Builders with your host, Dwayne Veron. Welcome to another exciting episode of Society Builders. And thanks for joining the conversation for social transformation. In our last 3 episodes, we've been exploring 4 of 5 of the key principles associated with Bahá'í approaches to social action. So far we've explored the need for organic growth for our initiatives, the need for coherence, getting our beliefs and practices in alignment, that our initiatives should be participatory, giving agency to all, that our initiatives should build capacity. And so finally today, we're going to explore the 5th and final principle here, at least for our purposes, that our initiatives should reflect an approach characterized by learning and action. And after our next episode, which will explore the upcoming Rezvan message, we'll start a sequence of episodes providing case studies where we can see how these principles for social action come into effective practice. I mean, exciting stuff. So let's get started today as we explore how our initiative should reflect an approach characterized by learning and action. Now, as we discussed in previous episodes, the organic nature of our journeys require us to continuously adjust our approaches along the way. Similar to that story I was sharing in our last episode about how my college club back at the University of Texas had to adapt its approach to marketing, discovering this new amazing strategy of using bookmarks to advertise their seminars. We discovered a better way of communicating, and we adjusted our approach with great results instead of just continuing on with more of the same. We don't know up front what the best path forward is. We have to try things, reflect, consult, study, and adjust our path continuously. We need consistent, systematic action and reflection, operating in a true learning mode. So let's explore what this kind of learning mode should look like. So the Universal House of Justice highlights 4 stages to this kind of learning mode, and they frame this within a very specific paradigm. They say, the Bahá'í community has adopted a mode of operation characterized by action, reflection, consultation, and study. Study, which involves not only constant reference to the writings of the faith, but also the scientific analysis of patterns unfolding. First, and it's interesting that we start with this, but first is action. This is a huge contrast to how we normally think about learning. Normally, we theorize first. In fact, we often theorize in great depth, projecting years into the future because we want to chart the perfect path. We want to operate like a Fortune 500 company with a detailed plan, laying everything out for us. But here the Universal House of Justice is telling us, don't worry about getting it all perfect. Just act. Act and learn and adjust and then act again. It's a path grounded in this kind of action learning. As we act, there'll be things that work and there'll be things that don't work, obstacles that we face, recognition of new resources that we need. But the key is for us to be able to learn and adjust. So that sets the scene for the second stage, which is reflection. We need to act, but then we need to reflect on our actions so that we can learn from them. Now, stop for a second and think about what reflection looks like. As we all know, Baha'u'llah admonishes us to bring ourselves to account each day. So this is reflection. But what does this look like? Do we focus only on the good things that we did that day? No. We also look at our shortcomings, not to beat ourselves up or to feel guilty. No, it's so that we can figure out how to avoid making the same mistakes again. We don't dwell on our shortcomings, but we don't ignore them either. We focus on the path moving forward. So reflection is about looking at what worked, but it's also about looking at what didn't work. And obviously that means that we have to be objective here. Okay, so we reflect, then comes the next stage. We consult. You have your views, other people have their views. Let's learn collectively together. And for us to really consult, we need access to the data associated with our initiatives, because good data, really good data, helps inform our consultation. Let me give you a quick example here. Let's say that we're exploring whether to have our cluster reflection meetings on Saturdays or on Sundays. Now, we can limit our consultation to our opinions and our views and our anecdotal top of mind kind of like observations. That's certainly one level we can experience. Or we can try both ways for a couple of occasions and count the number of people attending. When we have it on Saturdays, we tend to get 50 people coming. When we have it on Sundays, it's more like 75. Now, that data doesn't automatically have to decide the question, but it should certainly inform our consultation. And we're in a better position to consult when we have access to that evidence. So to get to this kind of contribution, we obviously need to collect data, but we also need to make the data accessible to all. And this is what we mean by transparency. And of course, we need to analyze the data. And this is also important. You don't need a stats degree for this. It doesn't require regression analysis. All of us can and should participate in the analysis. Now, a trained analyst can help identify nuances, like looking at interaction effects between variables, like how it might be that younger people are less likely to come on a Saturday and how that might relate to their participation in some other kind of event, for example. So those are kinds of analysis that could certainly inform our consultation, but we shouldn't defer analysis to the expert alone. We should have the kind of culture where we all feel that we can participate in the analysis and interpreting the trends and exploring what the data really means. Okay, and finally, we study. Now, in all honesty, and I reflected on this a lot, I'm not sure how the stage of study differs from reflection. So this is a question I think we should all be reflecting on. But one possibility here is that reflection is more tactical, like what happened with this initiative, while study is deeper, like working towards bigger insights with deeper analysis. It's like our goal with reflection is to gather our facts. Our goal with study is to develop our insights. But certainly I think this is something we should reflect on. What does study look like, and how does it differ from reflection, that earlier stage? And here the Universal House of Justice gives us an incredibly powerful tool. They encourage us to rely on the creative word, but they also encourage us to look to the example of the methods of science in pursuing our analysis of the patterns that unfold. Now, science has a great track record in this business of learning and adjusting. It's the very reason that we have the ability to defy nature. It's the reason we can fly, build crazy tall buildings, remedy countless diseases, even the reason you can heat your meal in less than a minute. I mean, almost all of the wonders of the modern world are made possible by these scientific methods. They're truly powerful. And there are key features of this kind of scientific method. For example, we don't look to our results with a predetermined outcome. We allow the data to guide us to our conclusions. We approach the research from a truly objective perspective. Our findings are falsifiable, which means we might not get the answer we were hoping for or expecting. And in fact, we often learn more from failure than from success. Our approaches are replicable, which means that if others do the same thing, we expect similar results. We are transparent. Everything is out in the open. And the most obvious, of course, is you need data, good data. Without data, you have nothing to properly reflect with. These are the kinds of qualities we need to bring to our approach to study, aspiring to the kind of reflection grounded in science. And the Universal House of Justice helps clarify some of the conditions we need here, that our investigation is undertaken in an atmosphere which encourages detachment from personal views, that such ongoing investigation should give due importance to valid empirical information, that mere opinion should not be raised to the status of fact, that conclusions should correspond to the complexity of the issues at hand and not be broken up into a series of simplistic points, that the articulation of observations and consultations should be presented in precise and dispassionate language, that progress in every area of human endeavor is contingent upon the creation of an environment where powers are multiplied and manifest themselves in unified action. We'll talk a bit more about this all later in our episode. And the point of all of this is that we're working to allow the voice of truth to guide us. We don't know in advance what the best path forward is at any point in time, but we also don't allow that to immobilize us. So we act, reflect, consult, and study, guided both by our writings and by good science. Now, just like my last episode, I want to engage in a little bit of editorializing here. Again, I remind you that I'm just sharing a personal opinion here, and my opinions are no more or less valid than yours. I speak with absolutely no authority. But personally, I think of the 5 principles that we've discussed across these episodes, this final principle is the one where we need to make the most corrective work, because I think we continue making the same mistakes over and over again. I think we've made great strides in the other 4 areas, but on this issue, I think there's still a lot of legacy culture at work, which acts as an obstacle to us putting this into proper practice. And I share my concerns here so that if you agree with me here, we can work to change our own approaches to bring them into better alignment with our divine guidance. So we talked earlier, for example, about how we should learn from the methods of science and the qualities this reflects, that we are dispassionate and objective, that we are guided by the data and don't shape this to a predetermined outcome, that our initiatives are replicable, that our data is falsifiable, that we are transparent with our data. I mean, I could continue on here, but being scientific in our approach has a clear look and feel to it. And there are things that we're doing that I think are consistent with this goal. So one big change that has become a big part of our new culture, for example, is that most communities now collect data on their initiatives. And that's great. Obviously, science is fueled by data. So that's clearly a step in the right direction. But what do we then do with that data? Does it really inform our reflection, our next initiatives? And again, in many cases it might, but in many cases I think that's questionable. So here I'd like you to explore what you and your community do with that data and how it informs your reflection, study, and subsequent action. Now, maybe you're fortunate enough to live in a community that does all of the things that we've been talking about here, where the data is analyzed in a truly scientific manner. Or maybe you live in a community where the data is collected, but then simply ignored altogether. We collect data, but we just send it on, hoping it will find its way to the World Center and come back to us as guidance from above. So just ignoring the data altogether in this way is also a common response. But I want to focus on what I believe to be another response that clearly I believe conflicts with the methods of science and which I believe may be common in many communities. In my experience in such communities, the outcome to our reflection is pre-baked. We turn to data not to learn, but to support a predetermined decision. It's less science and more marketing. We mistakenly think that the role of data is to make our community feel good It's a cheerleading function. Its goal is motivational instead of being the voice of truth that guides us. Remember, the whole point of a scientific approach is to allow the data to guide us. It's about discovering the best path forward. It's not about making us just feel good. It's not about trying to persuade others that our path is the best path. So in such communities, the keepers of the data champion the data that supports their worldview, but hide anything that conflicts with that narrative. They don't make the data available to others to see, potentially compromising the consultation that then ensues. Now, in my opinion, this isn't ideal. Again, it's another one of these mistakes that we've been talking about, these legacy cultural issues. But what makes this a little different, I think, is that where so many of the other mistakes are now largely historic, this one, I think, continues in many communities. So it's something we haven't yet learned from. It's one in which many communities don't yet recognize as a mistake. And again, this is just my opinion. So let me give you an example to illustrate my point here. Now, I'm encroaching on some very sensitive terrain here, and I honestly don't want to offend anyone. So rather than talk about a real case study, I'm instead going to create an absolutely ridiculous hypothetical, because hopefully that will create a thought space where we can all come together to explore this issue dispassionately. So my totally absurd and ridiculous example here is this. Let's say that there had been some success in different parts of the world with what we'll call drone teaching for this example, where people use drones to deliver invitations to people's homes promoting our events. Now, obviously, I'm being ridiculous with this example, so please don't try this at home. But let's imagine that this was a successful method in certain places, like in Wyoming, let's say, where the distances are vast, so where it's much more convenient to deliver an invite like this via drone. And let's say that in your cluster, there's some enthusiasm for this idea, maybe by an institution, maybe by some believers, and there's an appeal to start doing drone teaching in your neighborhoods. Now, immediately we can see that there are different potential responses that might emerge in your community. In one scenario, there might be a lot of concern and resistance to the idea. Some of your community members, for example, might feel that this crosses a line and constitutes proselytizing. And let's even imagine that a lot of people in your community feel that way. So, what do? Do you sally forth with drone teaching as the main thrust of your subsequent teaching campaigns, or not? Well, I'm sorry to tell you that if this is the case, and this is purely my opinion here with no weight greater than yours, but in my opinion, if you have this kind of resistance, then this idea is dead on arrival, because it's unlikely that this initiative will be pursued with unified action. So it's ultimately doomed to failure. Now, I appreciate that not everybody can be on board with every idea. I appreciate that it's easier to be unified in inaction than it is to be unified in action. But if there's that kind of resistance, you're simply going to be spinning your wheels. You won't attract the divine confirmations necessary. You need unified action, and certainly not this kind of division. At best, you'll find yourself alienating members of your own community from participating in the teaching campaigns altogether. At worst, it might even divide your community. Okay, so that's one scenario. But let's look at a more positive scenario now. Let's say that there is enthusiasm in your community to adopt the approach. Okay, what next? Again, let's pause here to apply what we've learned here from the guidance we've been studying thus far. If there is this enthusiasm, then we should start small and grow the approach organically. Let's test the waters. Let's do some pilots and gauge how the wider community responds to this approach. Is it effective? Does it have adverse consequences? And what is it doing for us in our community? Is it motivating our community? Is it building momentum? So this is where our scientific analysis comes in. As we venture into testing our new approach, Let's collect data and analyze it dispassionately. In fact, we can even construct our initiatives to test different approaches. We can promote one event with our new drone method, another event with Facebook ads targeted in our neighborhood, another with stalls that we set up. And we do a few events with each of these different methods so that we collect data across initiatives. The point is, though, that we're looking for evidence that supports that one approach is better or worse than others. And if there's evidence that supports that it's effective, that might act as a catalyst to helping build unified action. But if the data comes back telling us that our approach isn't successful, then we have to be detached enough to move on to testing other approaches, no matter how much we might love those drones. Now, again, my example here was intentionally ridiculous. But if you reflect, you might be able to think of initiatives in your own communities. Was there resistance, and how was that resistance met? Did you try to grow your initiative organically, or did you go all in straight off the bat, making this the centerpiece of your campaigns? Did you collect data and analyze it impartially to weigh the relative success or failure of the initiative? And if it wasn't right, if the data showed you that the approach wasn't effective, did you walk away, or did you continue clinging on to it for cycle after cycle, year after year? So there's a lot to reflect on in terms of what we can do to learn from our past. But the point of this discussion is not to look at the past, it's to look into our future and how we can bring the methods of science to our party here. How can we frame our initiatives so that they lend themselves to proper analysis? And not just analysis by a data officer, but with an approach to analysis that is accessible by all. So this is something we definitely need to reflect on, re-examining our current practices to bring them into better alignment with what the Universal House of Justice is calling for when they summon us to study using the methods of scientific analysis. Now, my apologies if I offended you in that last segment. Once again, remember, my views are no more or less valid than yours. I'm just sharing my opinion here. I hope you will look to your own community experience to draw your own conclusions here. I'm simply raising a concern which you might want to reflect on. Okay, now we've covered 5 key principles for effective social action: that our initiatives reflect organic growth, the need for coherence, getting our beliefs and practices in alignment, addressing both the material and spiritual needs associated with our progress, that our initiatives should be participatory, giving agency to all, that our initiatives should build capacity, and finally, that they should reflect an approach characterized by learning in action. Now, one final point I'd like to make today. The reason we discuss these 5 principles is that we should work to make our approach distinctive, to reflect a unique approach to social action. I've seen community consultation where the focus is on the action, like let's collect canned food for the homeless. And that's great. But what is it that makes our initiatives different to those of the world around us? What makes it truly distinctive? This is why far more important than what we do is how we do it. And how we do it is to work to pursue our initiatives, trying to put these 5 principles in action. In other words, we need to try our best to pursue social action within the framework of the guidance provided to us by the Universal House of Justice. That's a truly exciting opportunity, and it's reflective of the approach which will most likely see us ultimately succeed. So that was a lot of ground to cover today. Now, our next episode will focus on the Rizvan message. I can't wait for that one. But then after that, we'll continue exploring social action, but this time with case studies where we can learn from actual experience and see how these principles are brought into the arena of action. So we've got some really exciting journeys in store for us. And as I mentioned in our last episode, we now conclude every episode with a custom-created song summarizing the themes of that episode. I'm able to do this once again through the power of AI, where I generate the lyrics, but all the voices, instrument, and music composition comes to us courtesy of AI. So this episode's song is called Learning Together in Action, and it focuses on the 4 stages of learning in action: action, reflection, consultation, and study. So stick around for our song today. Thanks again for joining me in our conversation for social transformation. See you again next time on Society Builders.
We start with action, bold and strong. Dive right in where we belong. With hearts on fire, we make a change. In this world, we're gonna rearrange. Next comes reflection, deep and true. We learn from what we did and do. Learn from mistakes as we advance. Adjust and adapt our every stance. Capacity building in action learning. For positive social action, always yearning. Our quest is guided by the methods of science. Our path to truth is through data reliance. Consultation is the 3rd stage, an opportunity for all to